Welcome to this explainer. Today we're cracking open the pages of a truly ancient, revered text to unravel the epic origin story of a legendary figure named Kripa. You know, in these massive, mythic narratives, the grandest teachers and warriors, they rarely just have a normal, quiet birth. It's almost always steeped in cosmic struggles and wild divine interventions. And man, that is exactly what we have today. We're looking at a story that forces us to really think about what happens when intense spiritual discipline absolutely crashes into raw physical power. We're going to jump right into the timeline of this incredible myth to see how a monumental legacy kicked off right in the middle of a random forest. The whole narrative kicks off with a completely bewildering question from the ancient king Janapadi. He basically asks, how did a legendary warrior spring from a clump of heath, and where in the world did he get his weapons? It's a fantastic hook, right? Because it instantly throws us a biological impossibility mixed with a huge mystery about martial mastery. We're not talking about a standard birth here. We're talking about a guy literally sprouting from the dirt. Okay, let's dive into this and see exactly how the text explains this completely impossible phenomenon. So to really understand Kripa, we actually have to look a generation back to his father. The text introduces us to a guy named Saradwat, who is the son of the great sage Gautama. Right out of the gate, the mythology screams that Saradwat is not your average kid. He was literally born with arrows in his hand. I mean, just imagine that visual for a second. From his very first breath, his entire existence is defined by weaponry. The text says he had this massive aptitude for the science of weapons, but absolutely zero interest in any other subject. His destiny was literally forged in arms from day one.
Now, what's really interesting about this is the totally unique way Saradwat went about mastering his craft. Normally, you'd picture a warrior studying under a master, right? Sweating it out, physically practicing with a bow or sword all day. But Saradwat was a brahmana, a class that's usually all about study, meditation, and priestly duties. So the text tells us that Saradwat acquired all of his incredible weapon mastery not through standard physical training, but through intense spiritual austerities. He basically took that deep, meditative focus that Brahmanas used to learn the sacred Vedas, and he applied it 100% to the science of weapons. He essentially hacked the system. He used pure spiritual discipline to unlock absolute martial supremacy.
But here's the thing. Whenever a mortal in these ancient texts starts racking up too much power through spiritual focus, major alarm bells start ringing up in the heavens. And that brings us to Indra, the chief of the gods. This insane combination of Saradwat's weapon mastery and his unyielding spiritual austerities genuinely terrified Indra. In this mythology, if you have immense ascetic focus, you generate a type of literal cosmic heat, a power that can actually threaten the hierarchy of the gods themselves. A mortal becoming that dangerously powerful, that is a huge threat to the divine order. So Indra realizes he has to step in, right then and there, and pull the plug on Saradwat's focus. So what's the game plan? How does the chief of the gods neutralize a heavily armed, hyper-focused ascetic? Well, with a highly targeted distraction, of course. Indra summons a celestial damsel, an Apsara named Janapadi, and his direct order to her is simple but absolutely critical. Do thy best to disturb the austerities of Gautama. Notice how brilliant that strategy actually is. Indra doesn't send a monster. He doesn't send a divine army to fight Saradwat. Why? Because a physical battle is exactly what Saradwat is prepared for. Instead, Indra sends pure temptation to break the mental focus, because that focus is the actual source of the warrior's power.
The setup for this confrontation is so dramatic. Janapadi arrives at Saradwat's charming little forest asylum, and the text paints this vivid picture of the encounter. On one hand, we have the ascetic warrior, fully equipped with his bow and arrows, living a life of total, absolute denial. And then suddenly, stepping right into his vision is this Apsara, described as a figure of unrivaled beauty on earth. She's completely alone in the woods, clad only in a single piece of cloth. It's this ultimate juxtaposition. You've got the ultimate weapon of divine temptation deployed directly against the ultimate wall of mortal asceticism.
The source text describes what happens next as this rapid, chaotic sequence of cause and effect. Let's move through this and see how it builds in just a matter of moments. Minute 1. The temptation begins. Saradwat sees her, and his eyes literally expand with delight. Minute 2. His physical control completely shatters. The text explicitly notes that his bow and arrows actually slip from his hands, and his frame shakes with emotion. The very weapons he was born holding are dropped. Minute 3. He flees. And minute 4, the miraculous consequence happens right there in the heath. Let's break down exactly what went down in those final frantic moments.
So this is the absolute climax of Saradwat's internal battle.
It's a massive clash between his ascetic fortitude and this totally sudden mental agitation. His physical body reacts intensely, right? His frame shakes, and the shock of this mental agitation causes an unconscious emission of his vital fluid. But interestingly, the text goes out of its way to defend his inner strength. It clearly states that because he possessed such deep ascetic fortitude and strength of soul, he actually mustered enough patience to bear up against the temptation. He didn't actually succumb to the apsara. Instead, he made the incredibly difficult choice to just run away, literally leaving his weapons and his ascetic deerskin behind in the dirt.
But wow, the story definitely does not end with his retreat. Actually, scratch that. The real story is just beginning. As Saradwat fled, his vital fluid fell onto a clump of heath, and this is exactly where the mythic magic kicks in. That fluid divided into two distinct parts, and from that heath, miraculously, sprang a set of twins, 2 babies. This is exactly how that bewildering question King Jamajaya asked at the very top of our explainer. This is exactly how a legendary figure springs from a random patch of wilderness.
Now, we shift scenes away from the divine temptation and back to the very grounded human world of the forest floor. There's a royal soldier out in the woods acting as an attendant to King Santanu on a hunting trip, and he stumbles upon this bizarre sight. He finds these newborn twins just lying there in the wilderness. But here's the kicker. They aren't just in an empty clearing. They are surrounded by the exact remnants of their father's interrupted meditation, the dropped bow, the scattered arrows, and that discarded deerskin.
Now, this soldier, he proves to be remarkably observant. He takes one look at the scene and makes a brilliant logical deduction. He sees the ascetic deerskin, which immediately points to a brahmana. Then he sees the bow and arrows, which points to a warrior. So he puts 2 and 2 together and deduces that these helpless babies must be the offspring of some brahmana who was also highly proficient in the science of arms. Realizing how important this find actually is, the soldier gathers up the babies, grabs the weapons, and brings the whole shebang directly to King Santanu.
King Santanu, who the text describes as the first of men, looks at these abandoned twins and is just immediately moved with compassion. He declares, "Let these become my children," and he takes them right back to his palace. So the crucial point is how they get their names. Santanu performs the usual religious rites for them, and he names the boy Kripa and the girl Kripi. Why? Well, these names are a direct allusion to the fact that the king brought them up out of sheer motives of pity. The Sanskrit word for pity is literally Kripa.
Okay, but meanwhile, what happened to their biological father, Saradwat? It's not like he just vanished off the face of the earth. Remember, he had fled his former asylum to escape these celestial damsel. Well, he simply relocated and went right back to his intense study of the science of arms in earnest. But a master of his level? He has immense capabilities. Through his refined spiritual insight, he miraculously learned that his son and daughter were alive and living it up in the palace of King Santanu. It's like his spiritual radar allowed him to track them down from miles away.
Knowing exactly where his children are, Saradwat travels straight to the monarch's palace. He approaches King Santanu, lays out his entire lineage, and claims his children. But he doesn't just take them away. Instead, he imparts his unparalleled knowledge. Saradwat personally teaches his son, Kripa, all 4 branches of the science of arms. He passes down all the mysteries, all those recondite details he'd gathered through his own intense spiritual hacking. And thanks to this direct, one-on-one tutelage from his father, Kripa rapidly becomes an eminent professor of weapons science in his own right.
And this brilliantly illustrates the massive, epic scale of Kripa's eventual influence. Because of his profound expertise, Kripa goes on to become the martial teacher to the absolute most powerful dynasties of the era. We're talking mentoring the 100 sons of Dhritarashtra, the heroic Pandavas, the Yadavas, the Vrishnis, and just a ton of other princes from various lands. Think about the incredible trajectory here. The child born from a clump of heath in the middle of the woods grows up to literally shape the martial destiny of the epic's greatest heroes and villains. Talk about a glow-up.
As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with this provocative thought to chew on. What truly forged Kripa into this master teacher of legends? Was it the divine temptation sent by Indra that forced his birth in the first place? Was it his father's incredible ascetic power that somehow transferred weapon mastery directly into his bloodline? Or was it simply the grounded human pity of King Santanu who saved him from dying on the forest floor? It's this fascinating blend of the cosmic and the human, right? It reminds us that even the greatest legends are born from a really messy mix of destiny, discipline, and unexpected grace. Keep questioning the origins of the stories we think we know, and I'll see you next time.